Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Continuing the Conversation. AI is not what you think. And that's a huge problem for you and maybe your business. We often hear the term AI thrown around as if it's some kind of like buzzword or new thing. But the truth is, we're dealing with a majority and a major identity crisis. The AI most people think they know, the machine learning, the data analysis is vastly different from the new wave. Gen AI, it's here and it's raging. The difference is causing massive confusion, even with me and experts that are in the space, especially in the business world. So today, we're tackling a critical question. Why can't your data science team just do Gen AI? And more importantly, what should you actually do about it? To help us navigate this, I'm thrilled to welcome back my friend, Rob, the CEO of CharmIQ. I'm excited and I need your help because I'm a little confused. Rob, it's always a pleasure to have your unconventional perspective and to have your perspective to help me and others, maybe new to the AI world, really understand, embrace, and just comprehend what's going on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. This one's a really interesting one. We were talking a little earlier about all of this. A lot of these questions keep coming up as I talk to even friends and so forth who work in the industry. And where this is all coming from is we're using this umbrella term AI, and it means different things to different people. And again, I'm starting to see this more and more. And I was trying to talk to a friend of mine, for example, last week, and I realized we were kind of talking about two different things. And I went, aha, that's great. Anytime that I see confusion, that's awesome. These are really good talking points for this conversation. So let's kind of break this down into two pieces. What's interesting is if you've used ChatGPT or you've used any of the things like Midjourney or any of the other image generating tools, or maybe some of the audio tools like Udio, that's what's being put under the umbrella of Gen AI, as they're calling it, or generative AI. And so when you give it a prefix like that, like generative, that means that there's something you're distinguishing it from. So what are we distinguishing it from? And this is what's really fascinating, is that if you look at a lot of businesses today, and you asked the question about data scientists and so forth, is a lot of teams have been doing AI. And I shouldn't even put that in quotes, but that's not what we've been calling it. We would call it, for example, machine learning. You would have a data science team, and they would take in some data. They would do all the annoying things that we have to do with data in order to make it useful and stick it in a system. And then we would start to learn patterns on it and try to do predictive analysis and these type of things. And I'll just call that, for the sake of this for this conversation, I would call that kind of traditional AI that you think about, where, again, you have a large data set. You want to learn from that data set. We can even go back another step further and just say that all AI is trying to do, all machine learning is trying to do, whether that's using traditional techniques, whether that's using deep learning or whatever, all you're trying to do is you're trying to fit a function such that you can then use that function to do something. So if you have a bunch of dots, what you want to do is potentially find the value in between two dots. So if, for example, you're looking at your sales number over time or something like that, or if you're looking at your customer response rate and so forth, you have distinct values of those things. And what you want to try to do is have the machine learn a function that fits those things so that you could use it then to fill in all the gaps, or you could potentially look at it predicting forward or potentially filling in back data and so forth. So for the most part, all AI is really doing nothing more than learning a function, learning a mapping between some input value and some output value. Right. Again, if I have a sales number at a time, like if I have this number of sales, how much money do I need, or whatever, those kind of things. And so again, that's kind of traditional where AI and machine learning has always been. And again, I was talking with a friend of mine, and he was talking about it in that notion. So I was specifically talking about generative AI, and he was trying to apply generative AI to a much more standard machine learning style task. And that's when I had that aha moment, and I went, oh, wait, there's still a lot of folks who don't work in this every day, who don't realize that this whole new thing that's come about, this Gen AI, has really nothing to do. You can make some arguments that it obviously does, but for the most part, you could you could get through your day by thinking of them completely separately.
Right.
So what's interesting here is I've spent a lot of time in data and analytics. I've worked with all kinds of big data problems throughout my past 20 years of my career. And if you would have just taken that chunk of me and talked to me about that, like those techniques are as they have been. Like, sure, they're getting better and all those other things. But again, they're not really affected by all of these things that are happening on Gen AI. And so what's fascinating is you have a standard audience who knows kind of what's going on with traditional AI. Again, take some data in, perform some analysis on it, get something useful out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with Gen AI, it's more conversational, if you will. And I don't want to limit it to that bucket.
Mm-hmm.
But again, what you're really trying to think about with generative AI is you're either, and again, it comes back to what AI is, which is your mapping. So I'm taking text and I'm generating an image. I'm taking text and perhaps I'm using it to help me predict additional text. I'm taking text and I'm making audio. I can take audio and produce video. I can take video and produce other video.
Mm-hmm.
And so these are all just different mappings that we have. But again, when it comes to generative, you're typically, and I'll just put a little caveat for those who want to get nitpicky, you can take data and give it to Gen AI, and it can do what you would expect it to do with those things. It can look for patterns and so forth. We actually have some customers on Charm that use it to do fraud detection. We have some customers who get a lot of inbound emails, and they have to kind of really separate the wheat from the chaff. And we've found that Gen AI actually does a pretty decent job rather than spending time training a model, coming up with a data set and finding a holdout and doing all this usual data science work. They've gotten pretty darn far by just taking those emails and giving kind of a standard Gen AI system, think ChatGPT or whatever,
Right.
giving it a set of emails that they think they believe are fraudulent and a set of emails that they believe are true, and then just giving it their next set of email. And they can, again, with, I would say, greater than 90% accuracy from the tests that I've seen so far, further predict whether or not those new emails are either fraudulent or whatever, and what about them does that. So again, that was my quick little caveat to say that you can use Gen AI in a very traditional manner. But again, all I want to differentiate here is this new thing that we're talking about. This is something that you're going to start delivering to a different piece of the organization than you would before. So for example, with Charm, we really target the executive team. We're trying to build the ability for your executives to get kind of think of it as cognitive support, right? So as a CEO of a company, and I've had this throughout my career, is that it's kind of really lonely. You don't really have too many people that you can talk to about the problems that I deal with on a daily basis. Sure, I can talk to other CEOs, but it's really hard to get those CEOs on the phone. So what's nice is you can use generative AI to give it a prompt that says, hey, you're a CEO of this type of a company, like help me think through the different problems of this. And again, traditional AI, that's not a thing that I could have given a CEO before. Because again, traditional AI means I got to have a data set, and effectively I have to have a mapping that I'm already trying to get. So I may have an email, as I mentioned in a previous example, and a category that says whether or not it's fraudulent or not. And again, as a CEO, like, what do I do with that? Like, that's why I hire people, is to go perform that function. So again, this is really, again, Gen AI is a different beast, and it's targeting a completely different part of the organization. And again, just having talked with some folks in the recent past, I didn't realize that people didn't really understand that these were really two different beasts, and that they really affect two different, again, you think of them differently.
Yeah, I agree. And since I've been using CharmIQ for the last year or two, run our consulting business and introduce people to it, and not coming from a technical background, but coming from a human background in business development and sales and management and change management. Like, what are some of the specific skills needed for Gen AI? Like, what are the fundamental differences from, and you talked about the traditional data set science skills, and why is it so challenging to keep and retain existing teams? Like, you talked about the CEO example, and even with CharmIQ, I mean, I even think it goes a layer deeper, from not only the C-suite, but the
Oh,
team
totally.
under them, that really that grapples with these challenges and these complex problems, or it could be a management problem, it could be a hiring problem, it could be anything. And how is it so hard to retain existing teams or train them to use this new technology, and not only train but embrace? Those are some things that I
Yeah,
think.
so great question there. So there's kind of two sides to it, and again, primarily myself personally, because I just kind of had this aha epiphany moment that a lot of traditional, again, if you had AI traditionally in your business, you may not even recognize that there are newer things. Like, because again, if you're looking a particular way, if what do they always say? Like, when you have a hammer, everything's a nail, kind of a thing.
Oh,
Again, if you're traditionally looking at AI in a certain way, you may not see where generative AI fits, and vice versa. If you never really had worked with traditional AI before and you only use Gen AI, you may not know that how to set up data, to do data analytics, to do all these type of things. So what's interesting about all of this is, I think, as always, the first step in all these things is kind of a realization and an understanding of what it is that these things are. Think about where does your business sit, or what has your usage of these tools been in the past? If you're sitting in Excel, for example, and you're setting up linear regression and type of things, those are, you can dump that into machine learning kind of style tasks. And again, is that the type of organization, and are those the skills that you have, and is that what your organization is doing? And again, this new thing that's come about, this new generative AI, that's a completely separate beast. I would almost, and again, just to say, I have a lot of friends that work in traditional AI and work in traditional ML. And I'm now starting to recognize why I've had some of the struggles that I've had recently with them trying to understand what to do with ChatGPT. Because they're like, it's AI, and I do AI and ML. Like, where do I put my data set? Like, where does it go? And you're just like, oh, that's okay. We have an umbrella problem. Like, we're just
yeah.
not differentiating what these things are. So, one of the questions is like, well, with Gen AI, can I get rid of my data science team? And the answer is no. Like, these are two completely different things. Unfortunately, they have the same, suffix. They both AI, but they don't really have too much to do with each other. I'll just say that as we go forward, these things are going to start to creep up, and you're going to start to see blurring more in the middle. But I think while we can kind of capture this and nip it in the bud, we should really think of these things quite distinctly from each other. Data science, traditional ML in one bucket. Again, maybe we'll start to see tools that are using Gen AI to really help with those things. And just to say, if you've ever had experience in the traditional AI and ML and data engineering space, you know that 80% of the work is just doing data cleanup and doing all of the data prep work. And that has not changed at all. And it's kind of funny, again, now as I'm had this realization as I talk to my friends about Gen AI, and I'm talking about like how fast things are changing. And I could just imagine in their brain, they're like, well, my world hasn't changed at all. Really, I have the same sets of tools and the same everything. So again, we have this really weird situation going on right now where Gen AI is it's really pushing. And especially you see some of the large players like the Googles and all of these people, they're talking about this a lot, but is that sacrificing potentially some of the talk that they would normally be doing on traditional AI and helping with those tools? I don't know, but I think that now that I'm more aware, that's really important. So again, to go through that really quickly, the
Mhm.
first is just to recognize that this is a different beast.
Yeah.
Again, I've been doing this. I didn't recognize that it was a different beast, but now that I'm kind of looking at it, it's like, holy cow, we really need to think about these things separately. And then the second is like, where do you fit? Like, what are your needs? Is your organization a traditional ML? Do you have a bunch of data, whether or not you've collected it yet, or you should be collecting it? And then again, that's probably a traditional ML looking space. Or again, are you looking to generate things like, are you trying to take customer personas and generate copy, or are you trying to kind of use Gen AI as a classification task and say, hey, if I have this copy, which of these subgroups of these things would better resonate with these things? Again, these tend to be more Gen AI tasks today.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, and I love that you speak to the technology part of it and the scientist part of it and the data part of it. And I had a great conversation with a friend that's in marketing, right? And she has a creative group, a content group. It's a whole traditional marketing group for a nonprofit organization. and they're starting to embrace and implement AI. And they're really focused, the creative team is very focused on creative,
Mhm.
right? So they're going down that path of, hey, we're embracing AI and we're getting ChatGPT and DALL-E, and this is how we're going to implement it. And I was like, wow, that's great. I applaud anyone and everyone that starts the journey, that embraces the technology and
Totally.
starts to incorporate it on teams. It doesn't mean in some companies I've spoken to, the employees are afraid. I go and help companies with change management, and
Yeah.
people say to me, Chelene, I'm afraid
Yeah.
that this is going to take my job. And like you and I have always said,
Yeah.
the AI itself, the machine is not going to take your job. It's the person using AI. So
Yeah.
from a marketing and creative aspect, I said, look, it's not just creating images, right?
Mhm.
There's so much more. I mean, think about generative AI to be another person, another 5 or 10 people on your team. So they're a lean team, they're non-for-profit, and they're just using it for image creation. And I'm like, oh my gosh, wait, like there's
Yeah.
so much more. You can create personas of customers and buyers and consumers to get feedback on your creative.
Mhm.
You can also ask the machine, hey, what do you think about the creative that I have for this set of
Yeah.
consumers, and get feedback? And it's more of collaboration. So it's how can businesses leverage existing experience with the teams they have that are so brilliant and so wonderful, and then the new skills that they need for generative AI.
Yeah. So it's interesting as you were kind of rattling off some of those use cases. What's so interesting is, and just literally this morning, a friend of mine is creating a presentation, and he just needed a little clip of video, and they all come to me and they're like, "Well, what do I do? Like, what do I use?" And it's funny because it changes daily.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to give my standard advice, which is find your comfortable sources of information, find what you trust, and so forth. Throw comments into our podcasts and whatnot. If you have other questions and you can't find a trusted source, we'll help you
Yeah.
find one. Um, and there's just so many use cases that are being discovered on a daily basis. I'll just say what I said in the past couple videos, which is, adaptability is really the new skill. You have to be interested. You have to be curious to find where these things are. Because yes, what's interesting is, as a business, you do have to start somewhere. Otherwise, if you don't start starting, then it's basically you're not doing anything.
Right.
But then the second one is everyone's trying to do what they would traditionally do in a space like this, which is, they look out the major players, they find the right one, they go out and they do an RFQ, or even an RFI, and they do that. And I would just say, I don't think we're there. I'll be honest. Like, if you're signing yourself up for a year-long contract with some Gen AI provider right now, I would say you're going to miss a lot of what's going on.
Yeah.
But I'll just say again, if you need to you do need to get starting. So if that is your process and that's what you have to do, then, God bless, go do that. That's what you have to do. But I just encourage you to not get kind of stuck in those channels. Just again, to say, when it comes to, especially if you're a marketing team, and as we all know, because we work on these videos, it's a lot of work to edit. It's a lot of work to put in some of the interstitials and things like that. And there are tools coming out on a daily basis
Mhm.
to try to do these things. And again, how do you balance your explore and your exploit to like do this? And like, if you learn a tool, is it going to be gone tomorrow? Like, is there going to be something that supersedes it? And I'll just say, unfortunately, that's where we're at right now. You really have to commit some amount of time to figuring it out. I'll just say, OpenAI yesterday, as of when we're recording this, just released a new API called the Responses API, that brings together their assistance API and their completions API, and that effectively changes a whole bunch of directions. So we do these videos once a week, and almost every week that I come in, I'm just like, the world's changed again. And
Yep.
this is a big change. It's really kind of groundbreaking what they had changed within their API. Capabilities are kind of relatively the same, but they're bringing a whole bunch together. So again, all I'm trying to point out to you is and to the audience, is that you have to lean into the amount of change that's happening here. You have to dedicate some fraction of your week to not only getting your tasks done, but looking at different tools. And again, going back to like, how should you nurture your team for this, is you have to have these discussions with them and just say, hey, it doesn't look like it's looked in the past. You can't just learn, Excel this week and you're going to use it for the next year. That's not how this is going to work anymore. You're going to learn a tool today, and in a couple of weeks there's going to be a new tool. But then the next question is, well, should you have learned that tool before the new tool? And I'll just say, I work with a lot of younger folks that are coming into the industry today. And the only reason that I can keep up with what's going on today is I do have a history that has gone through all these changes. So every time there's a change, I'm just learning a delta from that change.
Mm.
And it's moving up, right? So if you wait to hear in order to starting, then you have to jump that big of a gap. But if you're slowly, and you could look at this as a technical debt problem, but if you're slowly paying down that cognitive debt every week and just slowly getting yourself acclimated, then with every jump, you're only learning a little bit. You're not doing this jump. And that's to slightly go askew from our topic here. I would just say that's what you're fighting right now, is you're fighting this constant emerging trend of like things moving. And in fact, it's accelerating. So it's starting to go like this, right? So every day that you're not starting, and I don't want anyone to say, oh, I missed the boat, I shouldn't do this.
Right.
Because you're still exactly in the right place. Like you can still see the boat from shore.
Yep.
But again, with every day, the leap's getting harder, and it's going to get a little harder to kind of, if you didn't start today, it's going to be a little bit harder tomorrow to start, both from an emotional standpoint and from like there's more to learn. So again, the things to do with your team are embrace the adaptability, embrace the fact that you're going to have to spend a little bit of time changing. If you can, don't nail down a year-long contract on something. I was actually listening to you earlier. Chelene mentioned that somebody had bought into the OpenAI Kool-Aid and going down that route. And I'll just say, from the fact that the DALL-E 2 and DALL-E 3 were like the poster childs last year, they're they're not even on the chart anymore when it comes to image generation. It has moved so far. And of course, they're going to come out with a new one. And of course, you'll have access to that. But if you just look at the sawtooth of ability to catch up, you're almost better right now, slightly overspending because you're going to spend with a couple of different things. But you're going to make up for that in the capabilities that you get. Just to say again, and this is not a knock on OpenAI, but they were the first to come out with their Whisper, which was all about audio, and they were first to come out with DALL-E 2 and 3. They were the first with the models. But if you look across the board, every one of those has been chiseled down. There are much better audio tools. There are much better image generation tools. Even looking at Sora, there are much better video generation tools. There's much better models out now. And I bring that up because, companies like OpenAI are going to try to be a one-stop shop. Google's going to try to be a one-stop shop. But I don't think that's how this is going to work for at least a year or two. There's just so many areas to go in. Again, from audio to video to image to all of the different things you do. Again, I would encourage you to just diversify your portfolio and try to stay as flexible as you can.
Yeah, I think one thing I will say, and how fast this is moving in terms of innovation and reimagining the work that we're doing, the tools that we're using, it's never too late to start.
Never.
It's never too late. It is a bit of a fire hose situation, but that's the one thing. And I will say, because I have been using CharmIQ for the last year under Revenue Pulse Advisors to help consult and help our customers get up to speed, is the platform manages all of those changes. The platform manages all the different machines, all the different iterations, and the ability to toggle between OpenAI or Gemini or whatever it is, what the latest and greatest is such an important tool. And my customers don't have to worry about all the changing things. They can toggle through it. And you're right, to pigeonhole like a year-long contract into one machine is not setting the team up or the company up for success. It's the ability to be agile, to reimagine, to figure out how we work and create and innovate in one platform, whether it's images, video, content, PowerPoints, or just having a Charm or an AI assistant as a CEO to like bounce things off of and get different perspectives in that one conversation from different machines. Because it's amazing how different they are, and how different they think. So I think for me, and for anyone listening or watching, like really challenge yourself. Like I have so many friends and so many colleagues and so many people that are out there like ChatGPT. That's what I use. I go, have you used this? Have you tried this? It's like, no, I haven't. So when they do, it's like, whoa, it's such a different perspective.
Yeah.
Right. So I
Yeah.
think that that's for me. For me, that's, in my terms and in my business is that change management piece. And it's so great what you said earlier is like, we have to be upfront with our teams and with ourselves. Like this stuff is changing constantly.
Yeah.
We have to get so comfortable with that change, and sort of embrace it like the new technology and say, guys, it's not, we're not going to learn this one formula or this one pivot or this one thing and be able to master it for the next year, because we have to be change agents. We have to embrace everything that comes with us each day. And like you've told me to do before, is like find those trusted sources, find those daily newsletters that give you the snippets of change. And sometimes I don't even understand what I'm reading. So I take that snippet, I put it into my workspace. I ask my dude, what's this mean to Chelene?
Yeah.
And they have such a good breakdown for me, just as you do. But I only get to do this with you once a week. And I need to have these conversations on the reg, on the daily.
And I'll just say that statement there, because I echoed it earlier in my discussion, is yes, you can find other people that you can talk to, but their availability is it's so small. And we are never saying that LLMs and Gen AI it should replace other people. You should still continue to talk to all of the people that you talk to. But what this does is, and I always bring this up, especially with my attorneys, because they tend to be the largest expense that I have as a startup, is every time I talk to my attorney, I'm watching the clock, like it's expensive. And if I can get myself ready, if I can already pre-ask the questions, and if I can just simply say, hey, I know these 5 things, like, are they true before I go? And then keep going, that, I'm not supplementing the time that I'm using with my attorneys. I'm not replacing them. I'm just making much more efficient use out of those things. I can ask the dumb questions ahead of time so that 1, it's not taking time and money, but 2, that it's a much more productive discussion. So, again, the example you just presented of sometimes you do read things on TLDR or Ben's Bites or any of the other sources, and you're just like, what does this mean to me?
Yeah.
And what's so important, and I always somewhat hate plugging my own platform here, but what's the reason we built Charm was so that you had a place to give your context, so that it knows when I have a question, like, what does it mean to Rob? Just as you had with your, what does it mean to Chelene? Like, that doesn't mean anything to ChatGPT, right? It doesn't have any clue as to who you are. Right. But, anyone who uses Charm spends quite a bit of time cultivating their context so that you can bring all of that in as you need it. And, I wear a lot of different hats. So explain this to me as Rob, there's a lot of hats that Rob wears. So explain it to me as a CEO of a startup, explain it to me as somebody who's working on technology, explain it to me. And again, that's what's so powerful about a platform like Charm, is that you can bring in those different hats that I wear. So I usually have context that is who I am, like basically my bio, what's my background. But basically then also on top of that, the context of who I am in this role that I'm working on and how do I think about the role that I'm in. And then I get a lot more better information. And so we're slightly on a tangent from this, but I think that the statement you made is just so important, that we now have these assistants that we've kind of always been promised. And sure, it's not turning off the lights in your house like you would like, though I hear the new Alexa is doing pretty well. But it's helping us in ways that we never even contemplated before. I never envisioned a world in which I could just sit down and say, hey, like me as a CEO of a company that has these kind of problems, like help me understand where this fits and how I should think about it.
Yeah.
I never thought I would have that.
Yeah, it's not replacing my mentors. It's not replacing my best friend. It's not replacing my boss or my lawyer. It's just, if I need to speak with someone or I need information, the context is so important, because on Charm, that platform knows me. It knows me professional me. It knows me as mom me. It knows me as pickleball me, right? So I can call on any of my assistants at any time, and I don't have to completely give them all the, like, hey, it's Chelene mom talking, right? Or Chelene consultant talking, or Chelene change champion talking. It's, the context is there. The platform is cultivated and knows who I am. So I can call on anyone in my team at any moment. but guaranteed, I'm still going to have the conversation with you like I do every week. I'm
every
still
week.
going to have the conversation with my mentors and the people in my life, my valid, trusted sources. But that's the beauty about AI, and that's the beauty about the machine. As long as you have the context and you don't have to keep repeating and reminding it who you are, is the beauty of the platform. And never have a shameless plug about this amazing platform that I love and use daily, and the information that's available. And I think the two things I got really out of this around the AI identity, it's like AI is having an identity crisis, right? About all these different acronyms and terminologies and technologies and machines. It isn't just a new tool. Like you said, AI isn't just a new tool, right? It's a shift, and it's a growing technology and a learning technology. And, so I think for everyone listening, watching, we love your comments. Challenge us, give us ideas, give us your experiences on this adoption, on this kind of transformation that we're all a part of. And if you're not a part of it and you're thinking about starting, and these conversations motivate you to get started, reach out to us. We're here to help. And CharmIQ has a starter and a pro and even a free version, which I always recommend, 39, $40. It's less than I'll spend for lunch today, unfortunately. But it's just so much more that you get, and start these conversations. And again, don't pigeonhole yourself into just one platform or one machine, because they change daily. So I hope this conversation has challenged your assumptions and sparked some serious thinking. Obviously, as always, the links to CharmIQ and our previous discussions are there. Please comment, and tell us what you thought of today's conversation. And Rob, before we go, is there anything else that you want to leave us with, or any advice, to anyone starting out or a data scientist that might be listening on the adoption, and embracing this kind of world that we're living in today?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be the broken squeeze box and just say adaptability is the big thing. Not to quote myself, but I'm going to do it anyway. It could just be that EQ is the new IQ. It could be that we just have to spend a lot more time seeing how we feel about the way these things are treating us. Like, am I learning? Am I stretching myself enough? Am I worried about what's going on? Should I be talking with folks and friends about how do they think about this stuff? Should I get engaged in a helpful community and so forth? So stay curious, stay excited. There's not many times in the history of modern history. We're in the middle of a protracted iPhone moment here. This is some pretty exciting stuff. Don't get freaked out. Lean into it and enjoy the heck out of it.
Absolutely. Well, I look forward to seeing you next week. And for everyone listening today, thank you for continuing the conversation with us. We look forward to hearing from you, and see you next week. Bye, everyone.